Boys don't become men simply by getting older. They must be shown the way. They must be initiated into manhood by other men. They need brothers. The world may be collapsing, but God is raising up good men to raise good men. It's one of the great God movements of our time, and you can be part of it. On the Dragon Slayers podcast, we interview ordinary men with extraordinary tales of conquering their fears and becoming fearless, loving men of God. Through their stories, you will hear rich wisdom, practical advice, and the value of brotherhood so you can stand out as a man among men. Warning, we will not mince words. We believe soft men and soft advice slay no dragons. So prepare yourself like a man. This is the Dragon Slayers podcast.
Joe Houston, thanks for joining us, buddy. Woo. All the way from up there in Alaska. Tucked away in the house that he built. We were walking around in that house when it was just boards. There was just boards everywhere, and the wind was howling through. You had snow on the flooring in your house, and now look at you sitting in there.
So cool.
Congratulations on that, buddy. That's good to see.
Thank you.
Joe, I think that, I show people pictures of my moose hunt, and I show them, I always show them mine first. And they're like, ooh, ah. And then I show them your moose. Now people think this is made up or it's something prehistoric or, it's a dinosaur. What is going on in this picture? How in the world did you find the biggest moose in the world?
So it's actually 65 inches wide. So it's not, to an Alaskan guy, it's not huge.
Yeah.
It's trophy class, but, some of the guys that I know some of the big bulls that I've seen are 70, 80 inches.
Good.
So, yeah. But this guy is what you'd call a non-typical. So he's not symmetrical. Each side isn't the same in any which way. And the tines on his the brow tines they're just huge. They're massive.
Yeah.
So I never did get it scored. I'm not that kind of guy. The way that we typically hunt, we hunt in areas where there's trophies, but first off is getting meat.
Yeah.
Whatever's out that's legal, we shoot it.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
that's part of the beauty of man's relationship with nature is really it's about the harvest, and I really have come to learn from you guys this value and this respect for nature and what you're doing. And some of these big old guys are just in the way. They're just eating, they're just kind of waiting to be taken out of the herd and let the young guys come up under them, And so this thing just was such for everybody outside of an Alaskan that's seen an 80-inch spread, mine is 57, It's not quite a trophy. It's not 60, I heard about after I shot mine, like, yeah, it's 57. That's, it's really, that's good. That's a good one, Danny. And now you're telling me there's 80s out there, and I didn't even know that. Wow. I thought this was a big moose, but
that's the theme at talking to all the Alaskan Slayers is we were like blown away by something like, oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of cute.
For us, it's average, or for us, it's Tuesday.
Yeah, that's kind of Tuesday. That's a cute one. Yeah. Hey, don't call me cute. Hey, don't tell me I got something cute. Okay. I was feeling all
almost died right there
until that second. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Joe, I know you as Joe, and but there is you have an email address and a nickname, Bears. How in the world does a guy end up with a nickname Bearsneck?
Well, so when I first came to Alaska, I started flying for a fishing lodge, and this is out in Bristol Bay. So Bristol Bay they call it the best freshwater fishing in the world. And I still, after over 30 years of being up here, think that's true. It's just, and all over the world for salmon, trout. It is amazing. But there's a lot of critters that like to eat that salmon protein. And one of them, of course, the main one everybody thinks of is bears. You think of like Katmai, Brooks Falls, all the bears fishing in the falls, and so I'm out in that country. When I had that job, I was out there from May through September, and that's pretty much when the bears are just packing it on. They're just looking for all the food they can stuff in their mouth, and we had, they're all over the place. The lodges that I was at sat on a lake that was 20 miles long, and there's rivers that run into it, and there's just fish everywhere. And I used to jog in the morning before I'd start work at the lodge, and we had a runway there that was about 1,800 feet long, and I'd run back and forth on the runway. And so I get up one morning and I go down on my first leg down the runway, and unbeknownst to me, I pass by a bear that's laid down in the bushes. He watches me go by, and I still don't know he's there. I turn around, go by him again, and he can't handle the fun. He wants to chase me.
He wants to play
tag. Yeah, there's something to play with. And so I'm just jogging, and I hear this thing coming up behind me, and I kind of turn around a little bit, still running, and there's this bear just staggered off about 15 feet behind me off to the side, and we're both looking at each other and we're both running. And I was at the other end of the runway, back more towards the wilderness and his comfort zone, and I'm headed towards the lodge and the buildings, but they're a long way off. And I know I can't outrun this thing. They hit speeds of like 35 miles an hour. I think I can hit maybe 13.
Yeah, downhill.
So I decided to stop. I kind of skid to a stop, and now he's inside. We're in each other's comfort zone. We're looking at each other. The stare down starts, and I start waving my hands, and I tell him, "Go home, go home." Trying to shoo him off like a dog. And he didn't. He's just looking at me, kind of turning his head like this, and he starts circling around me towards the lodge. And as soon as he started doing that, I thought, this is trouble. He's not going to go away. And right after that thought crossed my mind, he jumped at me, and one paw hit the front of my thigh and one hit my back, and it just pivoted me down and slammed me on the runway. And that one actually broke my ribs and punctured my lungs. And so I hit my head on the runway, and I picked my head up, and he grabs my leg and just starts chomping into it. And I'm not a real high excitement guy in stressful situations. I was just watching this thing. I watched him take a couple of bites, and I thought, okay, if he just takes a couple of bites, we'll be okay. He's gonna leave now. And of course, that didn't happen. He grabbed me, and he starts shaking me, and I can hear all this stuff coming apart in my shoulder. I can hear bones crunching, and so now I'm kind of on high alert.
Now.
So I figured.
Now I'm more excitable. Now I'm getting excited.
Yeah, we're like eye to eye now. We're like this, his God, and we're like this. So I figure probably better do something. And I had just read a book about bear attacks, and most of the guys had gotten away by playing dead. So I just held my breath, went limp, and just played it to a T best I could, and it worked. He dropped me after a couple seconds, and so I lay there, and he's circling around me. I can hear him walking through the gravel, and he sniffs me. I think he's trying to see if I'm still alive, if I'm any fun, any more entertainment, and I can hear him walk off the runway into the brush, And so I'm thinking he's just sitting there watching me. I'm still holding my breath. It's been, maybe 30 seconds, 20 seconds or something. And eventually I've got to start breathing. So I start breathing and I can hear the air going out of my back, that punctured lung. And I knew what that was. But in my head, I had this picture of like all my guts hanging out.
Sure.
It's just a couple broken ribs and a punctured lung. It's nothing big.
Not a big deal.
No.
So I started.
I can whistle out my back.
Yeah. Yeah. Could have played a tune.
Yeah. I'm a bagpipe.
Yeah. So I kind of start to figure out what I've got for limbs and what works and what doesn't. And everything worked except my right leg. It was kind of torn up, but I could still walk and kind of hobble. So I get up and I start going back to the lodge, and I'm moving as fast as I can. I'm actually in a semi jog. And I get back to the lodge, and I went to one of our managers' cabins and knocked on the door. And a couple other people saw me when I walked up into the yard. A couple of the staff. They went and grabbed towels, and the manager went up and grabbed the owner of the lodge. And so these guys are packing these towels on me, trying to stop the bleeding. I was pretty torn up. I was bleeding pretty bad. Right shoulder, my back, my right leg. And so we start figuring out how to stop the bleeding and get me, kind of stabilized. And the owner of the lodge, he's going to fly me down to Dillingham. It's a village that's 55 miles south, because we're out in the middle of nowhere. We're in a, middle of a park, state park in the middle of nowhere. So they get me up. We start heading down to the airplane, and we have one of our clients that week was an anesthesiologist. And so we have a stat kit. If nobody knows what those are, it's a suitcase with medical supplies. This one was pretty high grade. It had morphine, all the suture stuff and everything in it. We throw that in, grab the anesthesiologist. We get in the airplane, and I just flown the airplane in the night before from Anchorage, and it was no fuel. It had, I think, about 16 or 17 gallons in it, which is, nobody would take off like that to go to Dillingham. It's enough to make it straight, but it's a typical Bristol Bay morning. The fog is down on the ground. It's just a 0-0 situation. Can't see. So we take off. Didn't dump any fuel in. And we're going down the lake, and we're just right over the water, running the beach. And I can tell that the owner's having a tough time. He's, and I just keep thinking we're going to turn around anytime here and go back. And the anesthesiologist has got the kit open. She's trying to find a vein. I lost too much blood. She can't get a IV started. And we're probably about 10 minutes into the flight, and we're off the lake, and we're at the outlet. We're on the river. The river goes through these tall trees, and this guy is actually below the trees, flying on the river. Wow. It's pretty exciting. And I'm thinking, I'm not feeling real optimistic about this. Because nobody would ever fly in that kind of weather. It's just almost impossible. And the anesthesiologist, she puts down all the equipment, and she looks at me and she says, "Do you know Jesus?" And I was like, that just confirms what I've been thinking. We're in trouble. And so she just starts praying over me. She started praying the Lord's Prayer over and over. And I was just on like maximum stress level. It's kind of hard to describe, but when you think you might be dying, it's a different stress. And after a couple prayers, this peace came over me that just washed it all away. And I was just like, it did not matter if I lived or died. I knew I was going to be okay. I mean, everything, all that stress, completely gone. And probably 20 seconds after that, I passed out. And so I wake up, I don't know how many minutes later. If you're going by flight time, it was probably 10, 15 minutes. And I've got my head against the window of the airplane, and I open my eyes and I can see the runway at Dillingham at the little village there. And so we made it. We land, and they get me to the hospital and get me stabilized and get me back to Anchorage. And my my lung was collapsing. It had been so long, it started to collapse the other lung. And so that was the big priority, was, to get blood back in me and get that lung working again. And they figured it out. They kept me alive. And so when we land, go ahead.
Oh, well, keep going. Yeah, I thought you were going to take a breath. Go ahead. Keep going.
When we land, you said.
When we landed, a good friend of mine, he was there waiting, and with the ambulance and all the ground crew. And that guy, he taught me a lot about flying through my life. I still keep in touch with him. We still text, a couple times a week, and he still lives out there. He just sold his air taxi this year. But he came up with that nickname, Bear Snack. So the internet had like just come out, and I was setting up my email, and this is what that guy used to call me, was Bear Snack.
Yeah.
And I was emailing him. It was like the first guy I was going to email. And I thought that was just going to be my letterhead for for that letter to him. I'm not a big tech guy today. So turns out I was creating my email address.
Yeah.
And so I just left it. Just let it stick.
There you go.
That's awesome.
That's hilarious. And you have any lingering effects of that? Or, I mean, because I've seen you, I mean, out and about, and you don't seem to be gimping at all.
No. My right shoulder, he started to actually separate it, get it pulled. If I would let him go a little longer, he would have pulled it off. I lost like 10% of range and strength in it, but I don't really feel it until I'm doing something over my head, like directly over my head with heavy weight. So it doesn't really.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that story never gets old. Was that a turning point for you in your relationship with the Lord, or was that just what happened right there?
Yeah, that was a turning point. So age 27, I had gone to Sunday school for a little while when I was a kid. I wasn't really raised in the church. I mean, not at all. My dad went through some rough times and decided that we should go to church for about a year and a half, and that's where that's where God came onto my radar. So on a Sunday school trip, this was in Washington State. We were going to Ocean Shores, to the ocean, and just like you'd picture it in the old days, Sunday school bus, all the kids are riding and singing. And I was sitting next to one of the chaperones, and she had me say the salvation prayer. And so when we were in that airplane, the anesthesiologist, she asked me, "Are you saved?" She didn't just ask if I knew Jesus, but she asked if I was saved. And that's what I latched onto. I was like, that is a legal statement I made when I was 10 years old.
A binding contract.
Exactly. Yeah. I latched onto that. And then after I got out of the hospital, I just started chasing after God. There was a lot of other things that happened in my life that should have taken my life. Car accidents, et cetera, et cetera. I lived kind of a fast-paced life, still do. Um, but that just really intrigued me. That to me was like solid evidence that somebody was keeping me alive, and obviously it was another man or woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
For a
I started
reason.
after God.
Yeah. Awesome.
So
Awesome. Well, talking about a high-paced life there, I mean, this is the early part of your piloting career, or when did that show up? Pretty early on?
Yeah, that was real early on. That was my first flying job. So I think I only had like 600 hours total time flying, and at that point in your career, you're just hungry for anything to build time. And it was a good job, But yeah, it was early on, so I was 27. Now I'm 55, and I've got 15,000 some hours flying. So that was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so you kept going out there. You get bear snacked, and then you just keep on going out there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I didn't want to lose my job.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's about the time people choose another career, right? Like an office job or something, but not you.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
it intrigued me.
Yeah. And so you're not only you out there, but you're also a hunter.
Yeah, so I actually I guided bear hunts for, geez, I don't know, about 10, 11 years. I guided 4 other guides is what I would do. And then I started to figure out that the groundwork in these guided hunts was too hard. So I did the flying. I went to work for another camp where I was just doing all the flying, and I would just drop off the guides, and so it was pretty cool. I would stay in the excitement, but I didn't have to camp outside. I'd go back to the lodge at night.
Who's the smartest guy here? Right.
Yeah.
That's great.
Hey, Dragon Slayers, you're going to want to pick up Danny Silk's new book, The Way of the Dragon Slayer, 7 Reasons Men Need Brothers. If you're listening to this podcast and you're going, man, I need some more of this in my life. I need to know what those 7 dragons are. I need to know how to slay them. And I need a template, a playbook to gather men around me, to get my own 12 so that I can experience what I'm hearing about on this podcast. Then you got to get the book. Here's another reason you need to get this book. Every single person who pre-orders the book right now is going to get an exclusive Zoom interview with Danny and John Eldridge. I mean, talk about a couple of mighty men of God. They're going to impart some wisdom on you and some practical advice that's going to change your life. Everyone who pre-orders the book gets that. But guess what? 250 people who pre-ordered the book are going to win exclusive Dragon Slayers merch. We're talking about single release merchandise. You're going to get a hat that will never reproduce again. You'll be one of the OG original gatherer, a legacy founder member of Dragon Slayers. And here's why you definitely want to pre-order the book. Only when you pre-order the book at dragonslayers.co, that's dragonslayers.co, one lucky person is going to win an epic trip with Danny and his group of Dragon Slayers. We're going to take you to Wyoming, and you're going to become truly alive in the presence of amazing men of God, and it's going to knock your socks off. All you need to do to get involved, to punch your ticket for all of that, is go to dragonslayers.co, that's dragonslayers.co, and pre-order Danny's new book, The Way of the Dragon Slayer, 7 Reasons Men Need Brothers. Do it now.
I remember one time I was up there, I was speaking at Northgate, and I don't know if it was Dennis, somebody had you come and pick me up on a frozen lake. You landed on skis, and I think we were in a little Piper or something, some smaller plane. And you said we're flying through the air, and you said, "You want to see something?" I said, "Sure." He goes, "Look out that window." I looked out the window, and you turned the plane sideways. We were like flying sideways through the air. I'm like, "What is going? What? Who? Are we okay? Is this?" And then you landed in front of that glacier. You remember that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And then you shut it off. We're looking at this big glacier face, and you open the door, and you said, "Uh-oh." And I thought, wow, what exactly does "uh-oh" mean to Joe? Because what does Joe mean? He's kind of a low excitement guy, and that was excitement he just leaked out. And I see, like, what does "uh-oh" mean? He says, "You got your boots on?" I said, "No, I have shoes on because I wasn't expecting to traverse a glacier today." And you say, "Okay, well, the skis are buried under ice here. So, huh." And I'm like, "Yeah, huh." And so you fired it back up. You pulled the throttle. All the water on top of that ice covers the windshield, and we are now flying at the face of this glacier until we lift off. And we could have died. But we didn't, right?
Yep.
How many
Yep.
of those do you have in your belt?
Quite a few. I mean, I think there's a lot of stories that I've maybe forgotten. I'd have to sit and dwell on it, but there's that job. I flew out of Lake Hood for about 11 years for a company there, and we would fly about 750 hours in a summer, and that's a lot. I mean, you're on the dock early and flying till dark, when that happens. And it's kind of like being a taxi cab in the sky. So you get as far as work goes, you get all comers, you get tourists, you get hunting camps, you get more like contract work. You get fish and game, might do fish surveys, that type of stuff. I've done a lot of that. We'll see some of the other stuff. We've moved dead bodies. We had a group of customers that we'd known for a long time, and the father had died. The end of the business day, they called up and they were like, "Hey, Dad died. We're going to bury him out at the cabin."
Wow.
So they did the paperwork, threw him in a body bag. Next morning, there he is on the dock.
Wow.
But as far as other, I mean, I've probably had, I don't know, like 5 near misses that were really close. One of them was out at that fishing lodge. I mean, I could see the whites in this guy's eyes that was flying the other airplane.
Oh my
Fly the other airplane.
The other airplane. Oh,
Yeah.
like,
Lot of those.
He was almost excited.
Yeah, but I've never had any crash. I ran a beaver up out of a pond out in Bristol Bay once. That was the worst thing I'd ever done. So I always,
I'm gonna stop you, Joe. You ran a beamer out of a pond. What does that mean?
a beaver?
Oh, a beaver.
I heard
yeah. So it's a de Havilland Beaver. That's a single engine float plane. De Havilland, so they made, yeah. That's a little deceiving, right? So and we took Danny flying in that Beaver one time too. Remember?
Yeah. Is that where you got
Landed on.
glacier ice and put it in the float?
Yeah. We've had, and other stuff, mechanical issues. The worst one I had, we took off out of Lake Hood, and this story is actually, you can Google it. It's online, because the gal that was with me ended up being the manager from that lodge, from that fishing lodge. I showed up at the dock in the morning, and there she is going out to another lodge, and I hadn't seen her in probably like 15 years. And so we load the airplane up. Well, our load that day was lumber, fuel, and we decided we were taking 2 airplanes. We don't usually take passengers with fuel and lumber like that. It's actually illegal. So we called her part of the crew since she was a friend. and we loaded up the airplane with about, I'm trying to remember, I think we had probably about 100 gallons of fuel in the back, and then we tied lumber on the outside. This is what you do. It's called an external load. You just strap it on with ratchet straps. So we take off. In the lodge that we go to, you have to cross Cook Inlet, the salt water, and that can be some pretty nasty water. Oftentimes you're not going to land in it and survive. The airplane will flip over, and it's cold water. So we, just about the time I'm getting to turn out over the salt water, the number one cylinder blows off the engine.
Nice, perfect.
So yeah, perfect. And we're overloaded. By the grace of God, I look out the left window and there's a perfect sized lake with the wind blowing just right on it. So I just chopped the power and land on this little lake before we got off the land and over the salt water. But that was probably the worst mechanical thing I've had.
Wow. Sounds exciting. Sounds exciting. Where'd you learn to fly?
So I grew up in an aviation family. My dad's a pilot. A lot of my uncles are. Our family started a little airfield in Washington State, the Puyallup Airport. It's called Thun Field. That's my side of the family. So I grew up with it. I mean, I was literally, my first engine failure was in fourth grade.
Fourth grade.
With my dad.
Okay. Well, there you have it. There you go.
So it's
yeah.
It's pretty much all I've known my whole.
That's amazing. Well, Joe, I mean, I know of the guys that I know, you've been through some, I'll just call it the valley of the shadow of death experiences with family, with some hard stuff with your wife Colleen's health. I think the things that you've been through, I think it again and again when we go through life situations, there's an authority that we gather. I think when when Sherry and I have been through so much marriage struggle that facing it, not running away from it, maturing through it gives us an authority. Like, okay, we have faced this challenge. We faced the dragon, so to speak. And now we have keys to the kingdom. We now have things to give away to other people. And when I look at your life and I see the things that you've faced and gone through, I think, yeah, Joe's one of those guys. Joe has some keys to hand out in, facing some tough stuff. What would you say to anybody that's really facing some extreme life situations?
I think you hit on part of it right there, was not to run away from it. You have to stand. Don't let it knock you down. You can't. For me, the first thing I realized it was if I fall down, a whole lot of other people fall down. Yeah. And it's, nobody wants to be there anyway. It's to me, it's harder to be incapacitated than it is to be on your feet half incapacitated. It's just you just got to keep moving.
Joe, can you say a little bit more about what you mean when you said, if I fall down, a lot of other people will fall down? What are you talking about there?
Family and friends, like some of the stuff we've gone through. It's just, if you picture yourself not being there to help or even to be an emotional support or anything. Yeah.
Mm.
It's, I don't know, it's just, I've always tried to be the strong one for my family, and that's the way I always viewed it. Was if I'm not, and I'm not there for them, they're going to be hurting a whole lot more. And people watch you. You know that I've got this metaphor uh, with bear viewing. We used to do that was something we used to do with the air taxi. It was fly to Katmai and some of these places and do bear viewing. So I've observed bears for a lot of hours, and humans we're just like bears. We're looking at other guys or looking at other guys. How did you do that? How did you become successful? How did you whip that situation? How we're just naturally like that. We have to learn through observation. Otherwise, you learn, a harder way through pain.
Right.
And bears like that at the fishing hole, they learn how to fish. Younger bears, they watch other bears.
Mm.
They watch them kill moose and eat them. They watch them catch fish. That's how they learn. We're the same. And so I want the younger men that are around me to look at me as, I want them to learn. I want them to learn to be strong.
So good.
I'm going to share a real specific example of what you're talking about. A younger man watching and learning from another man. We've been referencing our Alaska trip on those snow machines. It's been epic. And one of the things that when you said men watch other men, it's so true. There was something I watched you do the whole trip, and then I said something to you about it while we were riding. And the thing I noticed about you is this quiet strength, this idea that everywhere we were, you were usually in the back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're usually behind.
Yeah.
And you didn't say much. You were just always there. And I was like, I felt so supported by this guy. But it's this unheralded, we're following, we talked about, Shane has been packing the trip, and we're listening to Craig tell us a lot of stuff. And you had a lot of great wisdom too, but they felt like they were leading this thing. But there's this idea of serving us by just being a watchful eye and making sure sheepdog.
Yeah.
I'm protecting these people. So it was something I noticed, and I said, hey man, I feel like I just got to tell you, Joe, when we were out there, I was like, you're like the rear guard.
Yeah.
I got this word for you and about being the rear guard. And it's something that I took away from, like, oh, this position is just as important. It's just as needed, because it's that idea. And then hearing you talk about, man, if I fall, other people might fall. This idea of a service to other people, that my strength shows up and it adds strength to people. So that was a day I totally felt your strength, and I was very much paying attention to you, and it wasn't lost on me how much you care for others, and that strength that you carry to just be paying attention and serving people so well.
It's awesome. Yeah,
I was a little bear watching you.
Little bear.
Catch
A little
the salmon.
That's right. Paying attention. Joe, I want to come back to something you said a minute ago. You talked about you just got to stand, and I was thinking about I'm pretty sure it's Ephesians 6. It says when you've done everything to stand, then stand firm.
Yeah.
And I think my question for you is, what does some of the truth sound like in your heart and head in those moments where you have to make a decision to stand? What's some of the things you're holding on to just in your heart that helps you stand?
I think I probably go back to my relationship with God and where I get my strength.
Mhm.
I think that's you have to glance back at where you've been and what you've done. And I like that, that scripture about setting up the stones after they crossed the Red Sea. And you got to look back at your stones sometimes. You look back at the accomplishments that God was there and helped you get through, and you knew you couldn't get through them without him. And so that stuff pops in your mind. It'll help you stand.
Come on.
It's good.
This coming from Bear Snack, so
Yeah.
and Danny often says, he said it this way, and it's mine now. I say it all the time too. That God has 100% success rate. in our life. You know, when we do turn around and look at our life and what he's done, everything I've faced, every time I've had to stand, every time I felt like I was not doing well, when he shows up, he has 100% success rate.
Yeah.
That's such a good picture, Joe.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He never fails.
Yep.
Joe, I know that you've
Yeah.
been walking with your wife through some tough health things, you know, and it seems like it's been going on for a while, you know, and I know you're in it right now, and we are praying for you guys. And I'm asking the guys, you know, how do you intentionally love your wife right now? What would you say is the most valuable contribution that you have made to Colleen? Maybe not just right now, but in your marriage with her, what would you say is the most valuable contribution that you've made to her?
I would say making her feel like a woman, because for men, when we get into a high injury situation, or you get knocked down, you're in the hospital for days or surgeries or whatever, you don't feel like a man.
Yeah.
And that's how our women are. When they're injured like that, or they're under this black cloud of a health thing, they don't feel attractive. They don't feel like your wife. And so you gotta make her feel wanted, make her feel loved, make her feel beautiful, make her, all those things.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well said.
So just treating her like the woman that she's always been and that you've always loved.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Every day is her birthday. I learned that from a friend of mine.
That's good.
And I got to tell you, I use that for a standard, and it is hard sometimes.
Yeah, it's a reset though, right?
Yeah.
It just kind of reframes the whole moment and the whole situation. Like, okay, today's her birthday.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Joe. You guys got anything?
It's just so fun to hear even those hard things you describing, Joe. As you're talking about your biggest contribution is just to help her feel like a woman, treat her like the amazing woman she is. I think just as I'm hearing you say that, I'm thinking that's so true for the season you're in, and men who are in a season with their wives going through hard times. I think it's true for any season though, for men. Like, tune into how are you treating this woman and what does she feel like around you?
Mm-hmm.
It's just such a great key, I think, that I'm grabbing onto, man. That's a special one. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, love it.
Probably one last thing we were talking about, kind of where do you draw your strength? My brothers are a huge well that I draw on. There's times when I've been hurting really bad, and I might not even say anything to Danny, Craig, Shane, anybody, but just standing by them, talking with them about something else or just having them in my midst.
All right, man. I got to say this story now. You just reminded me. So we're on our Dragon Slayers call. Danny gathers us monthly. We got on a Zoom call. We're all in different parts of the country, and I had shingles. I'm in my early 30s. I have shingles. I am not doing well. I'm on this call. I didn't want to be on the call. I knew enough that I better show up. This is maybe they got something for me.
Maybe.
But I'm laughing.
Maybe.
I'm laughing though because I'm out in my backyard. I have a single light on me in the dark. There's a single overhead light. I have my hood on. I look like a sketchy drug dealer.
Yeah,
And And we're just sitting there, like waiting for the call to start. And, I'm feeling like crap. And then Joe's like, Hey, Christian, what's going on, man? You look like, I don't know if you call it a drug test. Something's looking weird about what's going on. Like it was a joke of like, hey, but it was a playful way to point out like, this doesn't look like the normal you.
You look hammered.
Yeah. What's going on over there? And how are you doing? And I lean with, I am not doing good at all. And that led to me just sharing where I was at, what was going on. Whatever the agenda was for the call, it changed to, hey guys, see me right now. I am struggling hard. And all the men on that call started to just speak truth and life over me. I was going back to like feeling like a country song. Like I put my AirPods on, one of them was broken. I only had one working. So I had these two AirPods, but you guys start speaking truth and life over me. And I'll never forget, I felt a physical warmth coming through my only working AirPod. I could feel it move through my ear canal, and it felt like it was depositing in my spirit, like in my soul, deep on the inside of me. And that what you were saying, I draw my strength from my brothers. That day when I didn't have it, I did not have it. You guys brought it. And it is such a place to draw strength. And it's because we say around Loving on Purpose, see something, say something. Like if you see something that's off, say something and then do something about it. And so that moment might not happen if you don't say, hey, what's going on with you over there on that screen? You look, something looks up. What's going on? So if I haven't thanked you for that, I'll do it right now. Just thank you for seeing something and saying something, because it changed the trajectory of how I dealt with that season and put me on a course to become a much better me and change some things in my life that needed cleaning up.
Yep. Yeah. I remember that call.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yep. You were hurting. Yep. So good. Yep. When you've done everything to stand
firm.
Stand. Yep. Very good stuff. Joe, thank you so much for jumping on here, buddy. And really appreciate your faithfulness, your encouragement, your joy. You really are a low excitable guy, which means that you're a peacemaker in so many ways. You really add that I got your six, you're that guy. And I remember you following us around that whole trip. You were bringing up the rear, and if somebody fell back, they were with Joe.
Yep.
Except when we first started, you were out doing donuts in the lake, or the field or whatever it was, with your little you
trailer.
had that sled behind you, and you didn't know that you spilled everything in that sled all over the while you were just out.
It was just the food. It's okay.
It was just the food.
Just the food.
It was just all our food. Yeah. Hilarious. You and Shane show up an hour and a half later or whatever it was. What are you doing? Well, Joe decided to go do some circles out there in the field and lost his lunch. Lost all our lunch.
Lost all our lunches.
Yeah.
Covered him.
He did.
Yeah. Hilarious. Well, Joe, we got way more stories than we have time to tell. And I just love your adventurer heart, and always been challenged by some of the ways that you take it head on.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, sir. And thanks for being with us and being one of our brothers.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. You're the man.
All right. Have a great evening.